Well, it seems the train wreck is a-coming, and I can see a domino effect about to play out. And as many of you know, well, probably a lot of you don't know, I used to work in radiator manufacture, and this was all, mainly speaking, for the mining industry. It was all mine trucks, stuff, some of which would go to the giant mining shovels that, you know, like 20 tons of scoop type mining shovels, and, you know, 20, 30, up to 50 ton mining trucks, and things like Cat UGM. I believe we were the Asia Pacific supplier for radiators, and we went to go and become the global supplier for Cat UGM, which is Caterpillar Underground Mining. You know, those bizarre ones where the cabin's like almost sat down inside the vehicle, and the tyres are bloody near the height of the whole vehicle. That gear. Unless you've seen videos to deal with mining or been involved in mining yourself, you may never have even seen some of this stuff. It's the strangest looking stuff. Anyway, needless to say, I understand a bit about radiators. Not a whole ton, but a bit about radiators, and it's certainly enough. I've experienced stuff with this van that I've had here. With a lot of your older systems, including a lot of your basic stuff, some right through to the current day, have a radiator with a radiator cap on it, whereas a lot of your later Fords here, including both the wagon I've got and even the Hyundai van I've got, which is about the only Hyundai of that era that uses this system, you actually have a pressurized overflow reservoir, and the cap goes on that instead of on the radiator. But the Tiburon, which uses the same engine as the shitty little sports car they have, that has a normal one with the cap on the radiator. Anyway, you get a bit of a domino effect because most radiator systems are meant to run pressurized. I think it's about 10 psi. It's not very high. I will tell you that automotive radiators are like fucking bean tins, and some of them ain't even as good as a bean tin when it comes to strength and build quality. And when it comes to American radiators, they're sort of known to be, well, you know, just think of Chrysler, and Chrysler comes from America, and, well, the quality's fairly shit. I've seen a lot of American intercoolers for turbo diesels that they couldn't even paint them with normal paint. They had this thick filming vinyl. They'd go and grind off the weld spatter. They were using, instead of using like a little flap disc, they were using a fucking linisher, which looked like it was some piece of shit, like it rubbed it on a fucking grindstone, you know, and it was atrocious. The look and the quality was, you know, one time they modified 3 intercoolers for miniature street sweepers, and it was a certain way that you could do it without a problem. These things had quality control stickers on. 2 of the 3 were already leaking with quality control stickers on them. Like a lot of American manufacturing, they often find the cheapest way possible. You know, and there's reasons for that. It allows things to be cheaper, but your quality is shit. And yeah, long and short of it is, car radiators weren't shit compared to earth-moving equipment to begin with. What basically happens is most of your radiators are supposed to run under pressure around about 10 psi. It's not that they can't run without being under pressure, it's just that they don't cool as well. And he's basically been running that van not under pressure if that little O-ring on the cap has gone or been torn. Now, the series of events that can play out from there on is a domino effect. When you put on a new radiator cap, that radiator will suddenly run under pressure after not having run under pressure for who knows how long, maybe 6 months, maybe more. all of a sudden the corrosion that didn't matter when it was running unpressurized suddenly does matter, and kaboom, you blow out your radiator. And you may not even realise until you see the gauge inside telling you that the game's over, that it's too hot, that your engine is overheating. I'll backtrack a little bit. Why would it run under pressure? Well, it doesn't have boiling water, well it's not supposed to, and it doesn't have simmering water, but it has about scalding temperature water. It is steaming water. It builds up steam pressure much the same way that a Coca-Cola bottle has bubbles in the Coca-Cola. It has steam bubbles in the water slash coolant that you're using. And a radiator that hasn't run pressurized for a long time, that has had the chance to corrode a little bit over time, as they all eventually do, once you have a radiator cap on, and that radiator cap seals and it holds it to 10 psi or a pressure when it was never pressurized before, then things can blow out. You can lose all your coolant. And I mean, you can lose all your coolant in 5 minutes. And your engine overheats. And you say, if you're a stupid person who has no idea of these things, you say, oh, I've got to top the coolant up. Well, first of all, when a vehicle's hot, if it is under pressure and it indeed hasn't blown a hole out, you don't want to open that cap. I've opened them an hour after I've turned the engine off and the fucking things are still geysered up. But that's because they held pressure. Ones that don't hold pressure won't squirt up. But the idiot will instantly pour a bunch of cold coolant or cold water straight into the thing. Then continue to try to drive. Worst of all, they'll turn the engine off, which will stop the water pump, and they will pour a bunch of cold water in. Then they start the engine. You have a bunch of cold water hitting an engine that is getting closer to boiling temperature, and it is like getting a glass bottle and pouring water straight out of a kettle into the glass bottle. Thermal shock will cause the bottle to shatter. Thermal shock in an engine, however, can cause the block to crack, and it's fucking game over. I mean, it's fucked. You can kill the bastard. You can have coolant pissing out the side, coolant going into your oil. It cracks. As your piston goes to fire, it just fires straight through the crack and tries to open the crack up bigger. You can fuck an engine with 5 minutes of coolant leakage, followed by turning off the engine, filling it with cold water, filling the radiator with cold water, and starting it straight back up again, and then 3 minutes later you can die. It can be game over in 10 minutes with an engine. The other dumb thing is, you maybe have a little buzzer, you maybe have a little light, maybe you're too busy looking into the camera and ranting shit in another video called On the Road, and you're so busy talking shit that your 1989 buzzer doesn't work, or you never even had one, you just have a little light that comes on, and it's certainly not like some of these better systems where they actually will turn themselves off. My last Ford would actually go into a certain mode where it would turn off 2 of the cylinders and your engine would start shuddering, and you'd know because something was really on. You know, in fact, the 94 model, it used to have a beeper that would not shut the fuck up when your radiator coolant was low, regardless of if you weren't overheating at all. It would drive you fucking mad, that thing. Anyway, the fact is that if you haven't realised that it's out of coolant and you keep driving, all of a sudden you start getting backfires and all this shit, and it just your engine loses power, something chronic, because the engine is heated up to such a point that it starts to melt inside. It may or may not catch the engine on fire, especially if you have a lot of grease on the engine block. It probably won't though. But having said that, my uncle experienced exactly this with an engine. He stopped, he realised what had happened, but it was too late. He'd already overheated the engine. We ended up towing him back from the capital. The next couple of days he went to run the engine. It was incredibly hard to start. He was atrociously low on power because the rings had essentially melted to nothing inside the engine block. You have such little power, you have no acceleration and a very slim chance of even getting the bastard to start. That's what can happen if you don't realise that it's overheated because you're too busy talking shit into the camera as you're driving down a freeway or an interstate or a motorway or whatever you want to call it. So, without letting it naturally cool or leaving the engine run and letting the water pump mix the cold water that you're pouring in with the extremely hot water that's already in there, you can potentially fuck the engine quite easily. And it's just a domino effect. One stupid little O-ring fucks up. When you finally realise that it's fucked up, you put a new radiator cap on that causes the radiator to blow out, that causes the engine to overheat, and you either quickly refill it, causing thermal shock in the engine, or you just overheat it to the point that the engine loses any compression and dies on the side of the road if the heat of it doesn't cause an actual engine fire. And I'm sure Mr. Dumbass will be too busy looking into the camera and ranting shit when it all falls to bits. Because unless that thing has a buzzer for an overheat warning, which it probably doesn't at that era, then at that age of vehicle, I doubt it'd even have a buzzer, then yeah, you can kiss it all goodbye. And that'll be the end of it all. That van will be stuck there, he'll barely be able to move, and in case 4 miles to the gallons wasn't bad enough, try about half a mile to the gallon with smoke pouring everywhere and no acceleration. The game will be over. If he cracks the block in that thing, there's quite a chance it will never restart at all and it will be stuck on the side of the interstate. Like I said, over one fucking O-ring that you finally fix by replacing that radiator cap, you can have a whole domino effect and the game's over. He's going back to Chicago on a Greyhound bus with nothing but the hope that his family will take him back and help him rebuild. And that's it.